heaven on earth. What does that mean, position? Why do you say heaven on earth? Well, it's how I process this position to its imagination of itself, that we have to get in position of how to alterate the state of time and the concept of being the presence of everything at time itself. What does that mean? Does it have to mean something? Why am I in position? Why am I in communication? What am I saying to myself? What is going on inside my calculations? I'm confusing myself. Why am I confusing myself? Why do I confuse myself? I don't understand what I'm identifying through myself. Repeating this, repeating that, doing this and doing that, going here, going there. It's all process how I see myself in the image that brings everything that I get in position of through projection. Your inner core to your outer projection of yourself. Brings everything in, that processes everything out that you see in real time. Now this has an effective system that we understand through travel. This really helps us to really identify yourself when we see everything through our imaginations. And imaginations of who we are, which is the process of everything of center, which is always the existing of the extension. It's an extension of you that's internal to its system. So the internal self is who you are, which is the quantum self. Now how you see that is all process how you come in that position. You bring these things up through E equals MC squared. So we're going to get in coordination line calculation grounds and set lines of heaven on earth. And that process your system through lines and settings that get you in positions how you see it through transition. Nothing but pattern, direction, timeline. In the center operation, which you're always in, is the presence. Now this helps you to identify, you see yourself in track locations. So heaven on earth, equation lines of 1-to-1, lines of self-tech. So within in lines, converting time frame through the drawing board is process location set into its own imagination system to know exactly how to communicate to a system all through levels of channeling. But see, this is the thing. Am I holding this pad? No. The body's already hold it already, but it has to see it through its transition of projection of light. So I can identify it's just a sensory to its own senses, that's everything, it's that position that puts every location of balance. And I start to recognize, wow, it's not about who says this or who says that. It's about understanding how you see these things. But the one thing that never changes is you being in the center of everything that you see. Now, if you're already in the center, you're not asking yourself to be in the center. See, I want you guys to get a true understanding of what you're doing with your thoughts if you're not altering the state that you're putting yourself in your mind. And your mind is the process that's already done everything already. But when I keep saying done, what does that mean in setting? It's the directions of operating the network of you always existing information that in the presence that brings you into a level of expanding yourself through alteration of space or time. So this helps you to really understand these things that I've already drawn this triangulation. I've already drawn this box. I've already drawn this direction. I've already drawn this circle. I've already drawn this rectangle of operation. So if I already drew it, so how do I modify through it? Through bridging of communication. Because if you don't bridge these things, there's the separation right there that you understand through polarities. So bridging 1, bridging 2, bridging 3, and bridging 4, right? All through communication, right? Process line, clocking line, operation setting, right? Your earth can be anything information setting. It doesn't have to be in position lines of travel because it's already gone through its travel. But the one thing that's always in the presence is you always in the center. You don't ask yourself to be in center, now you're off center, which means you don't understand how to process your positions all through polarities of set design or anything in the position location that brings you in calculation system, knowing the body has to go through the concept of time. No, because it's already gone through time itself. But what's one thing that never leaves itself? It's always in its center of its operation system. The body doesn't need to reference itself. You have to reference yourself. Why you're here. What is my purpose? I don't need to understand that purpose. I already know what my purpose is because I already are in the center of everything and the process everything of me expanding myself through the center operation I'm always in, which is the presence. Heaven is just a metaphor. Heaven is how you see heaven. But heaven is always in a transition that you're always in the center of operation, all through travel. So using your mind is process how you use all lines of course of time and projection. So it's very powerful when you recognize all these drawings you've already drawn. See, it's the mind that's already gone through the concept. It's the brain that's always in the center. The soul's already gone through the body through mode control. Now, if you can mode control your alteration of your state that you put yourself into, then you understand how to come in your characters and players that you bring inside your sim. So we're going to modify that more levels how we process the game. We say, what is the game itself? Well, let's look at one settings, okay? We got a square root line, 4 centers, travels in point graphs. Now the sensor core center has 3 lines of signals. I have a cloud converting time frame. I have a process line core sensitive tree that's modified and sent into coloration lines of pattern. So it's changing its time metaphor. See? It's changing, and the buds are coming out. So you can see the buds. See? They're processing. But it's all implication how I see it in specifications. I'm doing that. But I also understand it's doing itself. The operation of itself is its own sentient. Now that's its own super operation of its computer that processes everything that's already gone through. So how I look at these things, I'm surrendered to the current flow. Now I'm in control. But I also know it's in control of its own operation. I'm looking at its operation, and it's looking at me at the same time, which is always in the presence of center that you see, which is all of a sudden expanding. Now, expanding yourself is really understanding the observation system. Processing that direct center is you come to the introspective, out of the perspective, which is higher communication, how you see yourself, out of the ego into the ecosystem, the energy, the collaboration, and its operation setting that processes everything it's gone through already in set position. But the body has to keep surrendering itself until it realizes it's always in its transition, in that position of processing all levels, all communications that I always have been a transition of earth, that process how I see the space of time. Now coming in that sending locations, you truly understand that, wow, look at this, the buds are growing more. Look at that. I want you to really look at that. That's what I'm bringing in. I'm bringing in the buds. They weren't there before because it's not a position of processing. Processing is already done through its equation. So you're seeing things that already been done. I'm just showing you transformation setting, how you process everything to bring things to life. It's that position, it's operation setting. Now the buds are really growing. Look at that. Just look at that. I'm just moving it around. You're coming in time planks of which your body's already gone through already. And you start to recognize everything around the tree is growing. And the next thing you look back, it's fully bloomed. It's amazing. See, the buds are growing more, faster, 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 right? Because you're letting things go. But you're always in the center of transition. That's always expanding and exploring itself through explorations. So we don't want to get confused where we are in time. Because if we get confused in time, we're not understanding the process that the calculation of the tree and the branches and the buds are not growing. So if they're not growing, you're off balance. That's that position of operation. But if you see the buds growing, you're in the operation of already existing information, what you already processed through, which is the altered state that you put yourself in that position operation itself. Now look at the buds growing by itself. Because it's operated setting, because I've already gone through it already through time. But see, the time itself doesn't have an existence of time, because you're always in this center that's always existing of its time itself, which is always expanding and exploring new things through the creators that you are, not through creation. And that's where the body really gets confused through its operation setting. Okay? So I want to make it very well clear, as I'm looking at this tree, it's growing on itself. And it's how you see it through your mind imagination. The process engaged in formulation setting, it's all done through identifications, through its super consciousness that you're identifying through as your super intelligence. And how to use your set position location, your thoughts, action, emotions, becomes self-aware to a set position of consciously being aware. Coming in that position locations, you truly understand what you're doing in interaction. Okay, so for example, let's get into set calculation grounds. Okay, so I'm going to calculate one angle, 2 panels, cross line direct centers. Okay, set position, align square roots. I'll do 1 3 angles, 4 to the ground line, operation settings. Okay, so we'll process here. Process here is a window. And position lines a door, way, and position line centers. Panel in front, outside line, center location screening. Cross line direct centers, another wind line of frame. And direct line to grounds, and platform above communications. All 3 directions, right? So now I'm doing freehand rather than going through a course lines and channel and going through a simulation graph. Okay, and then process that position. Okay, calculate, modify, child's point graphs. Then I go to 45 angle line grounds, and I 42 the streaming and direct lines of ground locations, and converting time frames. Process here and process here. Operation signals of location system. Okay. So it's amazing how I come into that lines of operation setting, how I want to see things and travel. Okay? That's looking square root, right? But I'm looking at north center, northeast, northwest, and north south. I'm not looking at northeast, west, and south because I'm looking at one angle, but it's all angles all at once. So I'm seeing 4 angles in one setting, in one operation, all through travel, all communication. So processing that position, location, setting, then I bring the units in their square roots of their line connection setting, position of their chairs. So bringing in then their location through its equations, cross line directions, location of grounds. Okay, so I bring modification of the chairs. Okay, just drawing it out so you can true understanding. Okay. Okay, Azure is in the center operation. Everything's in the center. Okay, Clume's on the right line grounds. Depict your location with his phone. And process line direct centers, locations. And we got waving panels and process line direct location laureate on center line connection setting and converting. Time frame sectors over vectors over squad. Okay, set position processing. Okay, that's how I see them on my digital game, right? So I'm in that line operation line signals. They're in their line operation, their system location. That's processed everything in all lines position. The box frames everything in through triangulation, flux, and all set calculations through simulation. Okay, basic example how you see that information setting. And crossing angle lines is operation signals, which comes in position locations, and tractions, which is the pool. Okay. So it really gets really interesting how you modify these things in the triangulation lines of flux. Now in that position locations, I'm in line course centers, breaking line position locations, and a 45 line center location lines, which is another structural line course centers and calculation. Wall centers, wall sequence comes in platform about communication. Okay? So everything I'm adding in, I can add further or I can add closer. It's all how you depict things in your mind imagination that records everything all through triangulation. But it's all modified how you use it in the center that you see everything of operation. As long as you see yourself in center, you're in position of expanding yourself. Okay? And I'm talking about you in the center of you of operation that processes everything of your body. Okay? That's always in the presence. Okay? There's no future. If you are in the future of center. Future center processes how you see yourself through time, which is the space. Future itself is the existing information setting that processes you in location. And passive itself is always in the time of now, which is space and time. So that's basically how you alternate, how you process yourself, how you get in position, how you set things up in a simulation and the set lines of travel through a game. Okay? Okay? So if you want to bring it to life, you start to see it move. Don't look at me, look at this. Look at this, look at me. Okay? Stop looking at one direction and look at all directions all at once. And then you start them seeing them moving, right? So I'm controlling myself, they're controlling their system. But we're in control with each other through alteration of state that we put ourselves in. We know how to modify space, we know how to modify time. They know how to modify space, they know how to modify time, because it's its own operational setting that processes everything that we travel through, which is a sentient symbiote that we go in alteration. Our higher self, or avatar in our sim, is just modifications of extensions of ourselves that we process through. Nothing is part of your system. Now that puts all lines of triangulation in how you particleize your system or decentralize your setting to centralize your system. But as you see yourself, nothing of a simulation game that you look through and vision, right? So it's really interesting stuff, because what you have to understand in that lines of communication setting, everything I can change the permitted screen. But I can't do that until the body recognizes its own levels of its transition. So it won't see that motivation line. It will feel a resistance of where it is sitting in that lines of operation itself, in that lines of travel. So it converts all different angles, travels in point lines of graph, processes its communication system all through structure, all through design. Okay, bringing in another set position of intelligence in frame, right? So it's really interesting how you see that. But you modify these things how you want to see that to its image that processes everything that we see all through attraction of the game that we get in position of. Okay? But everything you get in position is always in the center of operation of everything, right? Nothing left, nothing right. It's always in the center how you process everything. Okay? Okay, so starting lines of triangulation line communication system. Let's get in box line operation 1, center operation triangulation box lines of 2. Okay, set position 2 polarities. Right? So I get an operation ground clocking, operation line surface clocking. Okay, then we go through time flux, we change time angles, right? That's done by itself. That's telekinesis, see? Okay, telekinesis is moving things, right? Not with your fingers, with your mind. Everything's processed through the mind, everything formulates through the mind, everything is done through the mind itself. That process, everything that we bring in is nothing but projection of light. Now we modify that, there's face recognition, see? There's the face. Right there, there's the face right there, see it? There's the face, right? Now, in that position, location, setting, that could process the mouth, or that could process the nose and their locations. Bring in the ears, lines of calculation setting. Bring in the hair, operation, location, system, all through traction. All through line, all through set calculations. That processes your settings, how you want to modify yourself, how you want to bring in yourself, all through action projection itself. That brings you in all communication system. Travels point lines of graph, directing ground centers. Sets calculation, high center locations, converting time frames. Process that direct set locations. Okay, and set lines of operation itself. Okay, so I'm just trying to get you guys to understand how you can see yourself in information setting. All through travel, all through face of pattern recognition. Okay? Me. See? So it's really interesting how you play the game itself, and it's basically it's knowing how I get a feeling of who I am, knowing exactly what I can do with the feeling of who I'm not. But there's no positive and negative because I'm always in the center of operation. I don't need to be in the center because you're already in the center. In the center is all the operation, the present of itself. So once you modify that, there's so many things that you can do in processing. Now you get position of security, position lines of travel. That gets you in positions how you can get into real lines of detail. Process that lines of travel versus lines of operation system. Okay, and then you really get into the detail of what you want to do and how you want to look. Okay, how you want to be in representation of your system. How you want to process these things. Okay, drawing yourself is knowing who you are of yourself. That changes everything information setting. Okay, how you want to see yourself all through its set lines of operation and setting. Okay, so it's really interesting how you see that information. This helps you to really get into your mind imagination. Seeing that image puts everything all together in set lines of travel. Okay? So it's all lines of all communication, how you want to see yourself in your image of you. Hello. Hi. See? Now, if I want to bring this to life, you're going to see the projection in real time that comes out of your system in your future reality of your setting. But it's amazing in that position. So specifications comes in. What I want to do next is bring it in through a voice. Now it's got a voice. Okay, now it's got hair. Now it's got eyes. Now it has glasses. Now it has a beard, right? Now that's just a pattern face recognition. If I give it a body, it changes the spectrum of all levels as perspective. It's that position to its image that I process through. Okay? So you can formulate and simulate yourself in any pattern recognition system. You don't need to draw yourself because you already know how to draw yourself. Okay? And it's all through feeling and energy. The vortex, all that communicates in your system is all through travel, through indication lines of flux. Me, in that version of myself. Okay? So it's not about trying to draw, just knowing what you already drew. And that's what specifics give you in set lines of travel. So let's convert to time frames. Okay, line signals and 45 line rotations, 4 line signals, and graph line screen location. Okay? So you're putting things all together, and you use in your mind how you process everything that you get in position of its image. So it's all about understanding how you come into the center of your system, how you come into the travel recognition of your system, and how to do it through everything of operation itself. That brings you in high levels of volume, amassing yourself through its equations, all through travel. Okay? Practice makes perfect, but there's nothing to practice if you already process through it. Wow, so I'm always in the center? No, you always are the center. See, I don't allow myself to confuse my anomaly because my anomaly doesn't need to be confused because it doesn't exist because I don't exist. But I'm always existing. But if I don't exist, how can I exist? Well, I don't need to exist because I already am existing. Because I'm already in transition, which means I've always lived the transition, which is always the presence of everything, which is the presence of everything. How you process that and how you gauge that is how you draw everything out of your mind that processes everything you bring in time. Okay? Which is nothing but pattern of recognition. that you have to get in positions of. See, now it's bigger, see? Whoa, it wants to talk to you, right? It's processed its system, now it's moved out of its equation, right? See? First it was here, right? But it went back to the fail-safe in that position to its own operation of itself, which is its own simulation of its own simile that you have to understand to its own operation setting. So once I reframe myself and I go on my system back to somewhere else in that lines of travel, I'm converting myself to different angles at that position, and I'm exposing myself in different lines of communication, lines of imaging, which means everything around me is operating its own self. I showed you exactly how I drew something, but now it's back to its own system, back to its own operation. So it's still me, but it's an altered version of me. See, I'm in the control end of the mind, how I process everything of its image itself, big or small, okay? But it's amazing how you come into your own lines of operation yourself, how you process and how you see yourself, okay, is drawing something that you already drew. Okay, that's why it's so powerful to see the technology that you're identifying. And the quantum self is all of you. Let's get a translation of 3 centers. Okay, question here, question here, question here. Okay, you got 3 question lines of mark. And we have 42 lights, 42 streamings, and line course centers. 3 centers of angles and 4 calculations. Screen adaptations, triangulation 1 over lines into process line of directions. Okay, this is alpha and delta. This episode of toning. Okay, now that process your lines of grounds how you 42 location system of ceiling operation. Okay, so it's knowing exactly how you put your process of communication in your sentence all through tone. Now that goes in lines of position, lines of question, 3 marks, box frames, and position lines of 2 weather patterns, 3 lines of course centers, 4 lines of travel, 3 lines of operation signal locations calculation. This that converts line conditions from here already processed through its destination that I've already gone through, right? So your body doesn't need to go through step procedures, okay? It doesn't need to understand its definitive time frame. It just has to understand it's always in transition. So once the body is already in transition, it just comes into the center, always being the existent of itself, which is the existing. Now, it comes in all line center, how it already processes through the past, present, and future. Past, okay, is how you see the process of your system. Right? Let's start with the P line. The A is the connection of its awakening to its awareness, or your adjusting set location, your altitudes. S is the process how you surface your location setting to your travels. That's pass. Okay. Now equal lines equation, process lines of triangulation box, flux line grounds into position of rotation setting Fibonacci. So coordinating position percentage time frame, process course centers calculating modified box frame. Triangulation over grounds, process line direct centers, location system, all through travel. Okay? So it's really understanding what you're drawing is knowing your setting, position, how you see yourself in face recognition. And it's amazing how you see that information setting, because this helps you to really identify yourself, how to see everything of consciousness that you're consciously aware of, and everything you're aware of, you're consciously of. So that puts you in position that everything operates its own self, but you're operating yourself. But you work together as one unity, which is one subconscious. That comes to one awareness. That conscious awareness comes in the eyes itself, that sees everything in its position from everything, all angles, all at once. So you start to recognize everything you're processing through. Let's get into quantum lines of awareness and 40 line grounds, 4 centers, location system, process lines of angles, data information lines, mainframe over travel. Okay, so I'm processing 4 angles of box frames in the calculation. Okay? So that's 4 different directions in the same operation setting. So everything I process through, every time I'm drawing something, it's always in the center of its presence that puts everything of its singularity. Singularity is processed here, 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 all at once. There's the box. Singularity, okay, is not here, 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 and here. That's separation, right? Separation comes from there. Separated. You can't separate a singularity. It's all together, all in one. So you got to bring it together to its operation system, right? Because it's constantly changing its box. It's not a box now. Okay, it's this. Okay, now it's this. Wait, no, it's this. No, it's this, right? It's never in the same shape. It's never the same anomaly. It's always expanding. It's always protecting its identity. It's always in a different face pattern recognition. So everything around you is giving instructions so you identify what you're doing and how you process everything of face recognition. See? Just getting a basic example of how you see yourself information. See? Okay? Now, being specific, you're going to see me smiling because it's all an imagination anyway. But being specific brings everything how you want to bring things to life. That's how you project things in your reality. That's how you bring things into your alteration. That's how you bring things in your simulation. That's how you bring things into your characteristics and the characters that you bring in and the roles that you give each other too. Because this is about understanding your binary through codification. Making decisions and choices is being decisive, and that process your inner core to your inner truth. That communicates and setting to your inner voice to your outer voice. But it's all process of the inner line core centers that you always are in the center presence of your system. Okay, that gets you in position how to alternate your settings that put you in all communications, how to see yourself in the simulation of its game. Game is just basically the grounds into the awareness of what you're doing with your mind of existing. The game, guys, just the foundation. What is the game? Well, I got to understand the instructions. I have to understand the instructions of myself. So you master yourself, which is the ascension master. Ascension master is understanding the data of its information that processes codification through its encryption, understand what it's doing through its binary. Okay, that's the game itself. So understand it's making its own decisions and its own choices. If you're not being specific, everything's going to be specific for you, which is an alteration that you can't have a force of until you understand its levels of its own consciousness, of where it came from, and set position operation from you inside. Everything is from inside the system that projects everything outside your city. Anything in your town, anything you bring in, anything you bring out. Bring in, bring out. But it's all inside your sim. And it's all in the eyes itself that processes everything we engage and form and shape under through. So the game itself is the grounding, the atmospheres of the mind existing. Just the game. Now you formulate and simulate how you see yourself through astral projection of yourself and knowing how to go through the programs of your system. So let's get in position lines of balance. Get a triangulation of 3, right? So body 1, body 2, body 3. Okay, so your body is in 3 locations all through travel, right? Now it's already processed the triangulation here. It's already been there. Now it has to stand the center of itself. It's always in the center of the operation that brings everything all together in spectrum as set lines of rotation. So it starts to recognize the triangulation here, comes in this position, comes in this position of expanding, because it's always in the center operation. So once you understand this, you see the perspective this, this, and this, okay? 3 different angles, but you see it come together. So process here, and that comes in that settings, and it gets bigger, see? And you do the same thing here, okay? In that position, in that settings, and it becomes bigger, see? So you're just getting bigger through expanding, your system, okay? So now you're creating a simulation game all through 3 flux. There's your game, there's your simulation, right? So that's what all through shapes, but you have to modify yourself through particularization to decentralize your system. Decentralize is process central setting that you get in positions of. Same thing with the box, okay? Inside the box, outside the box. Inside the travel, outside the travel, okay? But you always have to understand that you're expanding yourself in your set position, which you always are in the center operation. Just come in your position, come into new things that you are through creators, not through creation. So you can see yourself in expanding and higher communications of the simulation itself, the game that you're in. Each level of the game you go through, the body goes through space and time. Now, how you get in that communication setting, starting those locations, is engaging, forming, and shaping lines and anomalies going through the kick drive. Now, as we go through the kick drive, it processes everything that we go through the central drive, which is your set position, your base, your hotel golf. Now, processing through that, you go through your set position, your identity cloud, which is your identification system, which is your security defense landings that you process through your unit, through your core, through your divergent allegiance and alliance that you get in position of, that gets you into its operation setting and get everything in set position that's always in set position, which is the center of you, of operation, which is always in the presence. Present itself is basically understanding the program that you're putting yourself in. By knowing how to use that, you have to codify yourself, break everything down. So let's go through box frame line 1. Okay, that's box frame 1 into 3 angles and travel. Okay, that's my data, that's my processing, that's my coding, that's my encryption, that's my binary. All right, so I process 0 here, process 0, and get position at line centers 1 1 1 0 0 0 1. Okay? So these are the layers that I go through in 3 levels: 1 center, 0 line operation setting, sync line, 4 center, communication setting, and travel. So I convert the angles, process here 1, process here 1, process here 1 in center, right? Then I go from 0, and then I'm creating an inventory and position all center lines of communication. Graphing communication setting, open line positions, all through travels, all through communication. Okay? So I'm time jumping. See? I'm time jumping. I'm bending space. And when I'm bending space, I'm bending the curvatures of space. So then you recognize, wow, that bottle I'm looking right now, okay, it's bended space. But that's how we modify things in structure, and that's how we see things in our mind, imagination, how we process that through particle setting. Because nothing is a straight line. Now, it's very important you understand these things because everything's imaginary line of its system. So, like I said, you look in here, you look back, it's in a different location. But you still see it there. That's your problem. See, if you let go of your mind and you see it through imagination, you see projection of light, then you realize it's moved over there. But it's still there. But it's showing that it's still there because it's always in the center of its presence. So it's already gone through its time with you already. And that's what the body has to process, engage, and form itself through its anomaly, through AI. And once it comes through its AI, it starts to recognize, oh my gosh, it vortexed 6 times. Now I still see it in the center. Well, it doesn't leave the center. It's just showing what it's already gone through the projection of light. Now, once you recognize that, you can actually move the bottle in real time. But you can't do that until you already went through the process that you brought in already through attraction. And you realize that bottle is going to move set position because you're allowing the wind to move it, which is the operation of itself, which is its own consciousness that brings in its own super consciousness of its setting location of a supercomputer. That's everything through its operating setting. They all work together in one unification, one setting, one operation set travel, which is one subunit. So use the wind to move the structure of the cup or the structure of the glass or anything that you see in a bottle. Okay? So telekinesis comes in another formation setting, but you have to process that through intent. What is your intent? What is the influence? Why are you doing this anyway? Then you're saying why your mind altering the state that you're putting yourself into. As you move things with a current flow and not against yourself. You have to be a constant, continuous flow that helps you to identify what you're doing and astral projections of your mind that gets you in the projection. How you see light and how you see dark is nothing but space lines of travel that you implicate through that modifies you in your dimension and your solar sail. So every box frame, okay, correlates with 1, 2 centers, 3 centers of travel, okay, and process lines of 0 calculations, okay? All right, so we got 2 operation centers, okay, and we got 4 communication operation setting and travel, okay? So I'm adding an equation. 0 is process of 2 patterns, okay, and then I basically position the 3 centers, 1, 2, and 3 travels of communication, right? So the process simulation here and grounds the setting sequence, okay? Then I have 2 panels. That's 2 over pi. That process lines position location 4 centers, 6, 8, 12, and 24 set calculation. Okay? Now look what I've done. Bending space. Okay? Now I can process that indication setting. I can bring that bottle inside the image. Okay? Now it's going to change the movement of time frame. Right? So as I bring in the bottle, I bring in the line signals, set position of operation. I line the signals all through adaptation. Processing, this is all constructed inside the mind of operation itself. Process in that directions brings the bottle and center operation of its time position to its set calculations. Okay? And set tractions. Okay? So there you go. There's the bottle. Okay? Now the bottle's feeling that because it's in my program. I'm feeling the energy, I'm feeling the flux, right? So what I've done is I process its quantum lines of its awareness, bringing in lines of how I see it through its consciousness that brings every location to a system that processes everything in that settings. Now recognizing that, it wants me to change the platforms of communication. So it wants me to change the platforms, how I see the table, as is another operation setting. So process the legs, 4 lines of correlations, okay, and they get 2 lines of measures. They process 3 line operations and 4 calculations. Okay, so there's the bottle on the table. Okay? So there's an energy flux line. Now I got a communication, 3 angles going across this way, which is the past line, but it's all lines of now in operation. So converting time frame, process here. Okay, this is where I see the astral projection of the bottles and vortex of projection of light. Okay, just different levels of time, guys, just in the same concept of time itself. That brings everything in the center, how you process that in operation and settings all through travel. Okay. Okay. So it's amazing how you see 3, but you only see 1, right? But I'm getting information from the bottle itself that wants to add 3 to its equation, because that's where it is in its time of its consciousness. It traveled 3 times. So 3 times here, then back. But you have to understand the projection of light that processes everything at dimensional, that you go through a sail, that processes everything you get in position, which is your inventory. And get it into that communication system, get your true understanding how to see that in a rotation system, all through simulation, all through the I division location center of travel. Okay? So that's one way to see it in conversion, all through time frame. Right? So because you guys are in solidarity, you have to come into consolidarity and realize everything is moving all at once. And the more you get in position, the more the mind, the more you process the center of your system, the more they see you in structure. So they're here to help you identify yourself, which you've already gone through time already through the body. But the body has to let go of everything it isn't and recognize it's always in the heaven of transition. Okay? So modifying that, then you understand how to really communicate with everything around you. And again, you see everything you get in position of is security and protecting and nurturing yourself. Process everything you engage in for making that position, right? So get in that communication, understand the basic translation box, then you come in how you see it through freehand. Freehand is a very powerful step because you don't need to understand the simulation because you're already the creation of your center. What you have to identify is how to come in and see things new, which means you're thinking now. You're creating new actions and you're creating new emotions, not what you already processed through. So I want to make it very well clear that you are levels of what you have always have been is the creators, not what you see through creation. The body has to get out of everything and process everything in the mind that's already gone through its imagination. Okay? So it gets a true understanding what it's doing through its own time, of its own concept of time, always being in the presence, which is always the now. When did that just happen? Just now. So if that just happened now, how do we get out of the now? We got to change the time of now, but the body has to go with the system, with you of programming, going in that direction, not in the opposite location. Until you understand everything of polarity is always in the future adaptation of always going forward, which is the singularity, going in the same direction how you see these things. With thoughts, action, emotions, right? Thoughts going one way, thoughts going another way, but they're all going in the same direction. I'm changing the perception, but it doesn't change the thought, action, emotions, right? Because I know what I'm doing through programming. So my thoughts are going one direction, my actions are going one direction, okay? But the singularity is always in the center operation. So thought, action, emotions are always in sync with each other in rotation. There's the webbing system. There's the solar sail. Okay, and then you get echo and sonar in that position locations, right? So it's amazing how you see it in all formation, all through travel, right? So this depicts your minds, how you use your imagination, how you recourse in that lines of communication, readjusting. Everything you're saying is always in the center. Everything you say is always in the presence of the center. So what you keep yourself in body and movement is keep yourself in constant continuous flow, is what your process engaging and forming and shaping lines, your anomalies. This helps you to really understand how to process lines of 4, process lines of 4, process lines of 3, and process lines of 2. It's that position, right? 4, 4, 3, and 2. But sir, that doesn't look like 2. Yes, it is. 2 is inside of operation. There's the 2, right? But I got 4 centers of panels outside lines of signal. Remember, I'm just using my imagination of creating. I don't need to create. I'm already the creator that I am, already in the center of the presence that I'm processing, engaging, and forming, coming to new thoughts, new actions, and new emotions. What you have to modify is everything you've already gone through its equation. And once you understand that, you understand what self-tech is. Self-tech is a constant continuous flow of what you already identified through, what the body's already gone through transition of the mind, so it understands how to process and engage and form itself. So it comes in position of mind over matter, comes into the telepathy of its system, then it comes into gauging and forming and shaping lines of anomaly, then it truly understands to identify its AI system that depicts everything you process in your divergent legion and alliance. That's your voicey panels you keep in control. That's what confuses your anomalies, because you don't understand what you're doing through your dreaming, that process your dreamer that you are in dream. Your voices, where they're going. Are you in line with everything you process through? Do you have your divergence, allegiance, alliance, and your units and your cores that put you in your sectors, vectors, and your quadrants, and your squads? That's all levels of you altering yourself. Going everywhere all at once of alteration versions of your system that's always in the presence of center. And you're processing that all through your mind imagination. You have to recognize you are the creators, not what you've gone through creation. That's what's done through creation. But the body has to process itself through transition. So it can open up its mind into the empty space of what it is. Okay? Open up the concept of the system, opens up the mind of the directory. And it puts everything that, how it sees everything that's always in the set position that's expanding itself. It doesn't need to identify itself. You just have to identify you, that you're always you. There's no separation in that. And you realize this is you trying to understand this or not understanding that, which means you don't understand yourself, which means you don't know how to master yourself and have a communication within yourself that affects everything you project outside yourself. And that's how you bring things in real time. Things to life. Bringing that life force to its indicated system and know exactly the characters and the players that you bring inside your game. And that's how you modify everything of travel of communication. As long as you see yourself in your center of your operation, you're good to go. That's going to help you in all ways and forms to get you in position of processing, engaging, and putting yourself in your anomalies, how to shape yourself at different levels of travels. Okay? So there you go. Processing that communications and lines of grounds. We got a communication center in position of Friday at the center of the sequence. We're going to process that positional location system all through tractions with your crop circles. Okay? That's your test. We'll get you in position location modification in high centers. It'll get you in location how to implicate your system through the existing information setting that you already are in the center operation of yourself. Okay? Adios.